Let me begin tonight with the P word, P for pasta. I am presuming that this wonderful audience knows what pasta is and does not require translation of the Italian word into English. Pasta is an Italian dish made of unleavened dough, generally made from durum wheat, the kind that grows just moments from where we sit right here in Winnipeg, Manitoba. This part of the world is a bread basket, a pasta basket. It's responsible for some of the best pasta on the planet. And by the way, are you still thinking about what that word in English is for pasta? Are you scratching your head? Are you thinking maybe that Uncle Chuck is off his noodle? Is there an English word for pasta? There is not. You can go to Webster's, you can go to dictionary.com, you can go to jolly old England, and there is no English word for pasta. It's an international word for a wonderful food. Any of us who've been fortunate enough to travel the planet have eaten pasta in many different countries, and it's always called pasta. Now, some people may pronounce it differently. When I lived in the States, many people pronounced it pasta, but it's the same word. I grew up, as you know, in Montreal, where we had over 250,000 people whose native tongue was Italian. You can imagine how many Italian restaurants dotted the landscape selling tractor trailer loads of pasta to customers. In the two-story duplex where I spent much of my youth, our upstairs neighbor owned one of these restaurants. His name was Mr. Gusmaroli. Just like my dad, he worked 6 long days a week. He was extremely proud of his restaurant, extremely loyal to his customers, extremely meticulous about every single aspect of that restaurant, the cleanliness of the facility, the freshness of the food, and the taste of the pasta prepared by his special chef. Now, I don't know if Mr. Gusmaroli is still alive. I hope he is, but if he is, my guess is the story that broke this week in Montreal, which came to be known as Pastagate, would have made him angry, ferociously angry. I know that while many people have been laughing at this story, and I too was able to laugh at some point, laughter was not my initial reaction. And so it's time for some Canadian common sense. Yes, the story broke in Montreal, home of the hideous and notorious OQLF, an acronym that stands roughly for the Office of Quebec's French Language, and known far and wide by names like the Language Police or the Tongue Troopers. And the troopers only need one person to complain about someone who may be in violation of that thicket of French language legislation in Quebec. And then they can be sent in. The troopers can be sent in to inspect the individual or business now under this dark cloud of suspicion. Well, an inspector was sent in to a very popular Italian eatery in Montreal called Buonanotte, which, by the way, means good night. And many people from all over the world have been to Buonanotte, and all to the best of my knowledge have had a very good night. Except for one tongue trooper, not pleased with the P word on the menu, pasta. A letter was issued to the owner of the restaurant, ordering him to change the word from pasta to the French, pâté alimentaire. Now, you might be asking whether anyone in Quebec, French, English, German, Chinese, East Indian, Haitian, Puerto Rican, whether anyone in Quebec calls pasta anything other than pasta. And the correct answer is only one: the idiotic tongue trooper. The word pasta is not a threat to the French language in Quebec. And so when the news broke that pasta was verboten, that's German, by the way, for forbidden, verboten on the menu of an Italian restaurant, it wasn't just Italians complaining, as you can imagine. Francophones were filling social media, filling the talk shows with various shades of negative emotion. The story was carried around the world, including countries like Italy and France. And of course, the reaction was one of laughter. Quebec was being laughed at because Quebec was humiliating itself. It was not the federal government humiliating Quebec. It wasn't the dreaded ethnics and the money, to use the language of the sorest loser we ever saw in our lives, separatist Premier Parizeau, after losing a referendum by a whisker. No, it wasn't the non-pure, non-pur-lain Québécois humiliating Quebec. It was the government of Quebec that was becoming a magnet for mockery. And so, the office in charge of protecting and defending the integrity of the French language, as spoken by Québécois, did a U-turn, and they told the Buonanotte restaurant that they were now permitted to use the word pasta on the menu instead of pâté alimentaire. And they, the office of the language police, they put the blame for this entire debacle on one tongue trooper, saying he had acted in an overly zealous manner. Translation, his heart, le cœur, his heart was in the right place. He was just trying to do the right thing. Now, of course, the right thing to do would be to arrest the language police, to put a padlock on this office forever, in my not humble opinion. I refuse to be humble about this issue. I'll never be humble about it, because I remember the day when the language police knocked on our door and instructed my honest as the day is long, hard-working father on what kinds of words were appropriate and inappropriate to be used on signage inside his little hole-in-the-wall tailor shop. He had little mottos that he would clip out of newspapers and magazines that motivated him, little phrases that affirmed his values, his feelings about honesty, hard work, and love of family, and love of this country. And these phrases were printed in English. And the inspector who showed up, I'll just call him Le Petit Thug, asked my father to remove them. Words like early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. Words like that in English above his sewing machine at the back of the store. Not where the customers were, the back of the store where he did his work. Those words above his sewing machine were apparently a threat to the integrity of the French language in Quebec. And I saw the anxiety in the veins of my father's neck as he took that little phrase that Benjamin Franklin published hundreds of years ago, and he took it down. And it took every ounce of restraint in my little child's body not to tackle Le Petit Thug, take him down. Take down the mottos in the back of the store where he slaved away over his sewing machine and a steam iron from early morning until late night, 6 days a week for more than 40 years of his life. Take it down? Yes, I did want to take the inspector down, but I was an obedient son, and I obeyed my father's instruction to just say nothing and let this agent of the government do his cursed, wretched, ugly work. And so, yes, as you can imagine, I've been waiting for more than 40 years to say this to the government of Quebec. If you truly believe in all the things you say publicly in Quebec and around the world about freedom of expression and how we value it and recommend it to the rest of the world, if you want to back up your words with action, which is the only way to exhibit character, yes, that's what I was taught at the University of Adler's tailor shop at the feet of my father, who said men who speak words and don't back them up, well, that makes the words hollow, and it makes the men hollow men. That's what I was taught by the little tailor hunched over his sewing machine. And I believed him then, and I believe him even more now. So I would say to the government of Quebec, if you really mean what you say, and say what you mean, if you're not just a bunch of hollow men and women, Madame Marois, if you have a shred of moral integrity, you will tear down not mottos in workplaces of honest, hard-working men and women, not words on menus of Italian restaurants. You will tear down the wall of language fascism, which is l'office de la langue française. So tonight, I say to the democratically elected Premier of Quebec, dévalez le mur. Tear down the wall. I'm the tailor's son. Mike Adler's son. That's Canadian common sense.